Finally, I won't have to see your face anymore, you freeloader. Get out, my mother-in-law sneered, her voice dripping with contempt. You should be grateful we tolerated your parasitic lifestyle for this long. I stood there, stunned by her venomous words, but I masked my true feelings. I see. I understand. I'll leave then. Thank you for everything until now, I replied softly, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. With quiet determination, I gathered my belongings, packed my bags, and walked out of the house where I had lived with my in-laws for years. As I crossed the threshold, I caught a glimpse of my mother-in-law's face, glowing with a triumphant smile, oblivious to the consequences that awaited her and her son. I left, my expression heavy with sorrow, but deep down, only I knew the freedom that lay ahead. My name is Emily, a 32-year-old woman who has carved out a career working remotely from home. 5 years ago, I married John, and for the first 3 years, our marriage was a blissful partnership. We laughed, dreamed, and built the life together. But in our 4th year, everything changed. My father-in-law, a kind and vibrant man, fell gravely ill, requiring constant care. As John was an only child, the responsibility fell squarely on us. With no siblings to share the load, we made the difficult decision to move into my in-laws' home to provide the necessary support. Initially, we believed it would be a temporary arrangement, but life had other plans. Caring for my father-in-law was no small task. I considered quitting my job to focus entirely on his needs, but my employer, recognizing my dedication, allowed me to transition to remote work. This was a lifeline, enabling me to balance my professional responsibilities with caregiving and household chores. Life in my in-laws' house was chaotic at first, but I adapted, juggling my job, cooking, cleaning, and tending to my father-in-law's needs. However, the harmony I hoped for was short-lived, as tensions with my mother-in-law began to surface. The conflicts were the classic mother-in-law and daughter-in-law struggles you hear about in hushed tones. My mother-in-law, a woman set in her ways, constantly criticized me. Emily, how long are you going to slack off and neglect the housework? Get to tidying and prepare the meal already, she would snap, her tone sharp and accusing. Mother-in-law, I'm not slacking, I'd respond, trying to keep my composure. I'm working from home, you know. Working? Ha! All I see is you clicking away on that computer, surfing the web. You call that work? You're just goofing off, she retorted, her outdated notion that computer work equated to idleness infuriating me. Her words stung, but I refused to let them derail me. I had worked hard to hone my skills, and I wasn't about to let them go to waste. Between caregiving and chores, I poured myself into my job, determined to maintain my income. After 3 grueling months, my efforts paid off. I restored my previous earnings, a small victory that brought me immense satisfaction. But the financial strain on our household persisted. John's income alone wasn't enough to cover our expenses, especially with the added burden of my father-in-law's medical costs. I thought my hard work would bring us some financial relief, a chance to save for the future. Instead, life became harder. Curious about our dwindling savings, I scrutinized our expenses and discovered the truth. John and my mother-in-law were squandering money recklessly. John, always eager to impress, had been using our credit card to treat his colleagues to lavish lunches and extravagant parties, even footing the bill for outings to questionable establishments like girls' bars. My mother-in-law, meanwhile, indulged in expensive hobbies, art classes, book clubs, and social gatherings with her friends, using household funds without hesitation. Both of them left the bulk of the housework and caregiving to me, treating me like a servant while they spent freely. Frustrated and exhausted, I confronted them. John, mother-in-law, you're both spending money wastefully. At this rate, our savings will be gone. Can you please cut back? John's face hardened. You think I want my colleagues to see me as stingy? You want me to be looked down upon? It's not about being stingy, I countered. You don't always have to treat them. And taking colleagues to a girls' bar on our dime. How is that work-related? You're doing it because you enjoy it. John scoffed, unfazed. You wouldn't understand anything about work. I'm considerate to my team to keep things running smoothly. My mother-in-law chimed in, her voice smug. I attend my classes to enjoy my dwindling years with friends. Are you telling me to stay cooped up at home? You're such a terrible wife, Emily. A housewife who doesn't even earn a cent has no right to lecture me. I do work, I protested. I'm earning, contributing to the household, and taking care of your husband, not just doing housework. Don't lie, John snapped. Mom takes care of Dad. And since you're not even going to an office, you're probably not earning much, are you? Who do you think you are, acting all high and mighty with your part-time job? I was stunned into silence. It was clear that John and his mother believed I was a lazy housewife, oblivious to the fact that I was the primary breadwinner, managing the household, and caring for my father-in-law. Worse, my mother-in-law had been lying to John, claiming she was the one tending to her husband, painting me as useless. I considered leaving multiple times, but one person kept me tethered to that house, my father-in-law. From the moment I married John, my father-in-law had been a beacon of kindness. Emily, I'm so sorry you have to put up with so much, he would say, his voice warm and apologetic. I feel guilty needing care, but I feel even worse about how my wife and son treat you. You're being taken advantage of, aren't you? Yes, I admitted quietly. With just John's income, we wouldn't be able to get by. It's my work that's keeping us afloat. He nodded, his eyes filled with understanding. I know. It's all thanks to your hard work. His gratitude was a balm to my weary soul. I loved my father-in-law dearly and never saw caring for him as a burden. But I worried about what would happen to him if I left. Who would look after him with the care he deserved? So I stayed, vowing to care for him until the end. A year later, my father-in-law passed away. At his funeral, I wept uncontrollably, grieving the loss of a man who had been more of a father to me than my husband was a partner. My mother-in-law, dry-eyed and cold, snapped at me. Emily, why are you crying so much? Because he's gone, I replied, my voice breaking. I've been taking care of him all this time. Of course I'm sad. Her face twisted with anger. As if I didn't care for my husband at all, she shouted, though she had barely lifted a finger for him, leaving the caregiving to me while she pursued her hobbies. She played the victim, shedding crocodile tears in front of relatives, painting me as a cruel daughter-in-law. Some even sided with her, whispering, "Stop being so harsh to your mother-in-law." I was merely grieving, yet I was blamed, even by strangers. Furious, I distanced myself from the relatives. John, noticing my withdrawal, confronted me. "So, you embarrassed my mom in front of everyone, huh?" "I didn't," I said, exasperated. "I was just grieving your dad's death." She came at me with snide comments. I only said I was sad because I'd been caring for him, and she took it as an attack because she did nothing. "Are you looking down on my mom?" he demanded. "I'm telling the truth. And if you're so upset, why didn't you help care for your own father? You're his son. Didn't you feel any responsibility?" "I had work," he shouted. "It was your job as a housewife." "I work too," I shot back. "It's unfair to dump everything on me." Our argument escalated, drawing the attention of relatives who intervened to break it up. John and I didn't speak for the rest of the day. After the funeral, a lawyer addressed the inheritance. "The family home and land go to John," he announced. "The remaining money is to be split evenly between his wife and Emily as a token of gratitude for her care." My mother-in-law's jaw dropped. Why would Emily get anything? I'm his wife. If John gets the house, the rest should be mine. The lawyer remained calm. "Your husband wanted to thank Emily for her dedication. This decision is final." "That's it," my mother-in-law exclaimed, her face lighting up with a twisted smile. "Emily's no longer needed here. She was only caring for him for the inheritance." I bit my tongue, knowing the truth. My father-in-law and I had discussed his will before his passing. He wanted to set me free from this toxic household, using the inheritance as a means to ensure my departure without resistance. His plan worked perfectly. My mother-in-law, completely fooled, was eager to kick me out. Pretending to be shocked, I said, "Oh, father, why would you do this?" "See, my mother-in-law crowed. Even my husband didn't see you as precious, John. You don't need Emily anymore. Divorce her. I turned to John, tears in my eyes. You wouldn't divorce me, would you? After a long pause, he said, It's better if we divorce. I've got the property, Mom's got money, and we don't need to worry about care anymore. I nodded, feigning defeat. I understand. There's no place for me here. I handed him divorce papers I had prepared after a previous fight. He signed them without hesitation. Get out, freeloader, my mother-in-law taunted. We put up with you long enough. Thank you for everything, I said calmly, packing my bags. As I left, my mother-in-law watched with glee, unaware of the storm brewing for her and John. I submitted the divorce papers to City Hall and moved into an apartment I had rented in advance. Alone in the spacious room, I shouted, I'm free. The weight of my painful marriage lifted, and I felt a joy I hadn't known in years. My father-in-law's plan had succeeded, and I was finally liberated. Life after the divorce was a revelation. Working remotely had been challenging at my in-laws, but now, with no distractions, I thrived. My income soared, allowing me a luxurious lifestyle. One day, John called, his voice desperate. Emily, please help us. We're struggling to make ends meet. Is this a joke? I replied. You told me to get lost. We're getting the same salary, but it's not enough, he pleaded. That's because my salary isn't supporting you anymore, I said, dropping the bombshell. You couldn't afford your lifestyle without my income. You and your mother squandered everything, never noticing I was the one keeping us afloat. What? How much were you making? He stammered. About $4,800 a month back then, I said. Now, without hindrances, I'm earning even more. John's voice shook. Let's live together again, Emily. It was a mistake to kick you out. You're just after my money, I snapped. What happened to your mother's inheritance? It's nearly gone, he admitted. Shopping, trips, casinos, we lost most of it. You're hopeless, I said, hanging up and blocking his number. A year later, I passed by their house and saw it had been demolished, likely due to their financial ruin. It was none of my concern. I embraced my newfound freedom, taking up a wine-tasting class I'd always wanted to try. There, I met a kind, ambitious man 2 years my senior. After a year and a half of dating, we married. He respects my work, and we share a joyful, equal partnership. I often think this happiness is a gift from my father-in-law, who gave me the courage to break free. Hey, Mom, bring me a beer, my son Paul barked, his tone devoid of respect. What? Has mother-in-law gone deaf all of a sudden? You can hear me, right? I said, get me a beer. This was the daily reality in my household, where I, Karen, a 72-year-old woman, was treated like a maid by my son and his wife, Jean. For 5 years, we had lived together under one roof, but their disregard for me had worn me down. Jean spoke ill of me to anyone who would listen, and Paul treated me as nothing more than a housekeeper. Ignoring their demands, I turned my back, pretending to focus on the TV, my heart heavy with frustration. My name is Karen, and this year, I'll turn 72. 5 years ago, Paul and Jean asked to move in with me and my husband, citing concerns about their financial future and a desire to save money. My husband, a 73-year-old workaholic who runs his own company, was indifferent to the idea, saying, do whatever you like. The house had felt empty since Paul moved out years ago, and I hoped their presence would bring warmth and liveliness. So I agreed, envisioning a harmonious multi-generational home. Initially, Jean and I split the housework, but as she claimed her part-time job was getting busier, the burden shifted to me. She helped reluctantly when asked, often retreating to her room or going out on her days off. Eventually, I stopped asking, and the household chores became my sole responsibility. I felt unappreciated, especially during meals, where conversation was scarce. My husband, always absorbed in his work, offered little companionship, leaving me to bear the weight of the household alone. One evening, as I prepared dinner for 3, I received a message from my husband. I'll be late. Don't wait up. This was routine, But then Paul and Jean casually announced they didn't need dinner either. Paul was going out, and Jean had plans with friends. "Why didn't you tell me earlier?" I exclaimed, staring at the meal I'd spent hours preparing. "I've already made it. It's fine. Just save it for tomorrow," Jean said dismissively, and they left without a hint of remorse. Alone in the quiet living room, I stared at the food, now destined for the fridge, and felt utterly exhausted. What was I working so hard for? The next morning, my husband noticed my dejection and asked about the uneaten dinner. I poured out my frustrations, detailing Paul and Jean's inconsiderate behavior. To my surprise, he listened intently, then said gently, "You don't have to push yourself so hard. They're not children anymore." His words were a revelation. I realized I had been overextending myself, trying to keep the household running while being taken for granted. Emboldened, I decided to rebel against Paul and Jean's entitlement. That Sunday, when they woke up in the afternoon and demanded lunch, I pointed to the leftovers. "Warm it up yourselves. You're not children." Jean laughed mockingly. "What? Is it menopause making you so cranky, mother-in-law?" Paul joined in, chuckling. "You're getting old, Mom." Their taunt stung, but I held firm. That evening, when they demanded dinner and even asked for money for delivery, I'd had enough. Ignoring their calls for beer and their insults, I turned up the TV volume. Jean, frustrated, grabbed the remote and turned it off, shouting in my ear, "Hey, mother-in-law, can you hear me? Make sure you prepare Paul's lunch tomorrow, got it?" Her voice pierced my eardrums, and I winced. She laughed, leaving with Paul as if it were a game. That was the final straw. Feeling unvalued and disrespected, I texted my husband and decided to leave. Early the next morning, I packed my bags and checked into a nearby business hotel. My phone soon buzzed with texts from Paul and Jean, filled with complaints about my absence. "What are you doing? I told you I needed lunch," Paul wrote. Jean mocked, "Are you wandering around, forgetting your responsibilities?" Their entitlement made me laugh. They couldn't even handle breakfast without me. When Paul called during his lunch break, I answered. "Where are you, Mom? You didn't even prepare our food." "You're not a child, Paul. Make your own food," I replied coolly. He grew defensive. "I'm paying living expenses, so you need to do the housework." "Living expenses?" I scoffed. "I've never received a cent." "Jean's been giving it to you every month," he insisted, calling me a liar. "I don't know what you're talking about," I said, cutting him off. "I'm not coming home for a while. Figure it out yourselves." A week later, my husband visited me at the hotel, revealing he had confronted Paul and Jean. Their texts suddenly became respectful, and he urged me to return home to hear their apology. When I did, I found them pale and subdued. Paul admitted he thought Jean had been giving me money, but my husband had shown him our household books, proving I managed everything while they contributed nothing. Jean confessed she had been pocketing the money Paul gave her, spending it on lavish dinners and outings to impress her colleagues. "Living with in-laws is stifling," she said weakly, as if that justified her deceit. "You accused me of squandering money when it was you all along," I said, incredulous. My husband, usually reserved, had yelled at Jean, forcing her to come clean. Paul, too, apologized, admitting he had taken me for granted. But their apologies felt hollow, a means to smooth things over without real change. "You think a simple apology fixes everything?" I said sternly. "Your attitude needs to change. I can't overlook how you've treated me." They tried to make excuses, but I held firm. "I'm full of worries about relying on people like you." "Jean, you embezzled our money because you were stressed? That's unacceptable. You can't stay here any longer." Realizing I was serious, they fell silent. Eventually, we arranged for them to move out. Jean began visiting occasionally, learning housework from me and complaining about Paul's laziness. She admitted her reliance on me, but I couldn't help thinking she was reaping what she had sown. Paul, trying to make amends, brought snacks as gifts, but the damage was done. My husband and I now enjoy a quieter home, and I've reclaimed my sense of self-worth. Paul and Jean needed to learn the hard way that respect and gratitude are not optional, Even in family, occasionally, I've always known my husband, Zach, wasn't the most eloquent man, his words often stumbling when emotions were involved. His focus was perpetually on his work, a trait I once found endearing in its simplicity. Yet, despite his lack of articulation, I was deeply touched when he acknowledged my tireless efforts during our heartfelt discussions about our son, Paul, and his wife, Jean. "Thanks for your hard work, honey. I appreciate it," he said, his voice gruff but sincere. I smiled, warmth spreading through me. "I'm glad we can talk like this again," I replied, feeling the truth of the old adage, "After a storm comes a calm." My life now is quieter, more fulfilling than before, a serene harbor after years of turmoil. It all began on a bitterly cold night, snow swirling through the air like a relentless dance of chaos. Out of nowhere, my cell phone shattered the silence with its insistent ring. I picked it up, bracing myself, only to be met with the wrathful voice of my mother-in-law, her words slicing through the line like shards of ice. "It's because of you that my daughter's in this state. Her face is unrecognizable. It's atrocious. You need to take responsibility. Why did you abandon her? You're despicable. My name is Amy, and I'm 33 years old. I live with my husband, Zach, in a modest home near the cafe I run. Zach has his parents and an older sister, a single mother, who lives nearby." That single phone call turned my world upside down, plunging me into a nightmare of accusations and confusion. "Give me back my lively girl. Why did you do something so horrible? I swear I'll make you pay. I'll never forgive you," my mother-in-law screamed, her voice cracking with anguish. She was incoherent, possibly in shock, spewing venom without explanation. "Mother-in-law, please calm down. I have no idea what you're talking about," I said, my voice trembling as I tried to soothe her. I strained to listen, desperate to understand her tirade, but my efforts were futile. "You have no right to be calm at a time like this. It's all your fault, and yet you have the audacity to say such things? Why didn't you help her? Why did you abandon her?" she wailed, her sobs drowning out any chance of dialogue. No matter how I urged her to speak slowly, my words seemed to vanish into the void, unheard. Her vitriol continued unabated, a relentless storm of blame. Suddenly, my father-in-law's voice came through, calmer but heavy with disappointment. "Amy, I hope you understand what you've done. Do you realize the state our daughter is in now? Fortunately, her life isn't in danger, but she has severe injuries. Why did you let her suffer like this?" His measured tone gave me a sliver of hope to clarify the misunderstanding. "Father, I'm sorry, but I truly don't understand what you're talking about. What happened?" I pleaded, my heart pounding. He seemed perplexed by my ignorance, but relented, sharing a story that made my blood run cold. My sister-in-law, a single mother living a 20-minute walk from our home, had been dating a volatile young man for some time. Zach had mentioned his quick temper and occasional violence toward her, but I never imagined the extent of the danger. The previous night, his mood had turned particularly foul, and he unleashed a brutal assault on her, worse than ever before. Fearing for her life and her child's, she scooped up her young son and fled into the snowy night, barefoot and in thin clothes, seeking refuge at our house, her brother's home. When she rang our doorbell, Zach, who was home, answered. She stood there, bruised and gasping, her child shivering in her arms, a picture of desperation. Anyone would have seen the urgency of her plight, but Zach, inexplicably, showed no concern. Instead, he appeared irritated. "If I let people in without permission, Amy will get mad," he told her. "Sorry, but can you go home? She's scary when she's angry. You understand, right? Please leave." He turned her away, closing the door on his own sister. Stunned, she begged through tears, "At least lend me money for a hotel." She had fled without her phone or wallet, but Zach's response was even more callous. "There's no way I have that kind of money. There's money in the house, but Amy would never let me use it without permission. If I did that, she'd divorce me. Sorry, but could you try somewhere else? It's cold, so I'm going in. See you." He shut the door, leaving her in despair, clutching her child in the freezing snow. With nowhere else to go, she trudged back to her home, where her enraged boyfriend met her with even worse violence. He beat her until her face was unrecognizable, kicked her child into unconsciousness, and continued his rampage as she tried to shield her son. The screams, mingled with the sound of breaking dishes and shattered furniture, alerted a passerby, who called the police. Officers found my sister-in-law and her child, battered and collapsed, and rushed them to the hospital. Though conscious, they were severely injured, facing a month-long recovery. I had been at my cafe that night, working late to develop a new menu, and didn't return home until after midnight, missing the last subway and taking a taxi. If I had been home, I would have seen my sister-in-law's desperate state, let her in, and called the police immediately. The fact that my in-laws believed I was the one who turned her away, coupled with the horror of her ordeal, left me reeling. Despite my father-in-law's accusations, I frantically explained I wasn't home when she came by. I worked late at the cafe. Had I been there, I would have helped her. I'd never turn her away. Please, give me time to figure out what happened. Though skeptical, he calmed slightly and hung up. That night, I confronted Zach after he returned from work. His response was staggering. I could tell something was wrong, but I was about to enjoy my beer and it was cold outside, so I wanted to close the door quickly. Plus, I didn't think there was anything I could do about it, he said, shrugging. My anger flared. Didn't you feel anything seeing her like that? Why couldn't you let her in? She's been through hell because you turned her away. I recounted her condition, but he deflected. Remember how you complained when my parents dropped by unannounced? I thought you'd be upset if I let her in. What did I do wrong? Why didn't you lend her money? I pressed. You could have done that much. He hesitated. I was short on cash before payday. I lost money on slots recently and only had $10 in my wallet. If I gave her household money, I knew you'd get mad, so I refused. I don't see the problem. I was speechless. The depth of his selfishness laid bare. I had always known Zach was self-centered, but I'd overlooked it, charmed by his other qualities. Now I saw my mistake. He lacked compassion, even for his own sister, prioritizing his beer and comfort over her life-threatening crisis. Worse, he felt no guilt. She'd have ended up like this anyway, no matter where she went, he said casually. She's safe in the hospital now, and we're fine. Thanks to me, right? His heartless words pushed me over the edge. I stopped arguing and called my father-in-law, detailing Zach's actions. He erupted, "There's no way my son would do that to his sister. You're lying to escape your guilt." He demanded proof, refusing to believe me. Desperate to clear my name, I remember my cafe's security footage, which showed me working until 11 p.m. and a taxi receipt confirming my late return. Armed with this evidence, I went to my in-laws' home. I was at my shop when your daughter came by. Do you believe me now? Faced with irrefutable proof, they had no choice but to accept the truth, though it shattered them. Trembling, my father-in-law muttered, "So Amy wasn't home." They called Zach immediately, demanding answers. He tried to blame me again, claiming he thought I'd disapprove, but his father cut him off. "We know Amy wasn't home, but your sister says she saw a woman in the house. Explain that." I froze, my voice shaking. "Zach, what's going on? Who was this woman?" His face paled, and under relentless questioning, he confessed. Knowing I'd be working late, he had invited his mistress to our home, a coworker he'd been seeing for a year. When his sister arrived, he panicked, fearing his affair would be exposed, and drove her away. He even admitted he had money but refused to lend it because he wanted to buy gifts for his mistress, a bag and shoes, prioritizing her over his sister's safety. "You fool," his father roared. "You betrayed Amy and left your sister in the snow. Why didn't you help her?" Zach's excuses crumbled, and his parents' fury was palpable. "You lack basic human decency," his father said. "We raised you, but we can't tolerate this. From today, we're cutting ties. Don't show your face again." I echoed their resolve. "I'm divorcing you, Zach. You cheated on me and endangered your sister's life. I can't live with someone like you." Shocked, he begged, "I'm sorry. I won't do it again. Please forgive me. But his pleas fell on deaf ears. His parents and I were united in our refusal to forgive. I learned the affair had been ongoing for a year, with Zach sneaking his mistress into our home when I worked late. His attempt to blame me for his sister's fate only fueled my resolve. I had him sign divorce papers, hired a lawyer, and filed for substantial damages against him and his mistress. I also called Zach's boss, our wedding matchmaker, and tearfully recounted his infidelity and cruelty. Furious, the boss ensured Zach was transferred to a remote branch office, while his mistress was relegated to a menial document sorting role. My sister-in-law, still recovering, took her revenge further. Working for one of Zach's company's clients, she used her connections to spread the truth about his actions. The company was stunned to learn he had abandoned his sister to hide his affair, and he became a pariah. Ostracized, his work suffered, leading to a demotion and eventual resignation. To pay my alimony, he drained his savings and now works live-in part-time jobs, barely affording winter clothing. The mistress, facing workplace scorn, clung to her job but was forced to pay damages after I contacted her parents. They were horrified, making her settle the full amount. She left abusive voicemails, blaming me for ruining her life, but I forwarded them to her parents, who apologized and ensured she stopped harassing me. My sister-in-law's abusive boyfriend faced legal consequences, and she secured damages for her injuries, finally breaking free from him. My in-laws and sister-in-law apologized for blaming me, and I forgave them, understanding their initial rage. Though now strangers, I wish them healing and peace. I moved closer to my cafe, within walking distance, freeing me to focus on new menu ideas without worrying about late trains. This ordeal taught me the importance of human decency, a principle I now live by, determined to lead a life I can be proud of. Leave. My girlfriend is having a baby, so pack up and get out, my husband John declared coldly, his voice devoid of remorse. I stood frozen, my heart splintering. Are you sure you won't regret this? I asked, my voice barely a whisper, clinging to a shred of hope.
No way.
Just get out of here, he sneered, laughing off my plea with cruel indifference. If that was his choice, I had no reason to protect his feelings. With a heavy heart, I accepted the divorce and moved back to my parents' home, my world crumbling around me. But at the time, I had no inkling of the twist fate had in store. Who could have imagined that the very next day, John would be at my door, begging for forgiveness, his arrogance replaced by desperation. My name is Lily, and my father is an executive at a publicly traded company. After graduating from university, I landed a job at a firm run by one of his acquaintances. I'll admit it was nepotism, but I poured myself into learning the role, determined to prove my worth and silence any whispers of favoritism. Over time, my colleagues and seniors began to respect me, and I found joy in my work, my days filled with purpose and growth. Meanwhile, my father grew concerned that my devotion to work left no room for romance, fearing I was living a lopsided life. To remedy this, he introduced me to John, his most capable subordinate, a young man he trusted implicitly. John is the most successful young man on my team, my father boasted, though John humbly deflected, it's all thanks to my superiors and seniors who guide me. At first, I agreed to date John out of respect for my father's wishes, but as we spent time together, I began to see a future with him. John was confident, driven, and took the lead on our dates, qualities I admired. His ambition mirrored my own, and I started to believe that marrying him could bring happiness. As my feelings deepened, my father noticed and encouraged our relationship. One evening, he asked John directly, "What do you think of my daughter?" John met his gaze steadily. "I'm dating her with the intention of marriage." My heart fluttered at his words, and everything seemed to fall into place. With my father's blessing, our engagement was announced, and plans for our wedding moved swiftly. John's sincerity and my father's trust in him made me believe we were building a solid foundation for a shared life. Little did I know that beneath his polished exterior lay a capacity for betrayal that would unravel everything. Every time my father and John met, their conversations brimmed with excitement. centered on wedding venues and plans for a new home. Seeing my father so animated, his eyes sparkling with pride, convinced me that marrying John might not be such a bad idea. His enthusiasm was infectious, and I began to envision a future filled with shared dreams. But before our marriage, John presented me with a condition that gave me pause. "I want you to quit your job and become a full-time housewife," he said, his tone firm. I hesitated, my heart sinking. My job was more than a paycheck. It was my passion, a source of pride and identity. Yet, my desire to marry John, to build a life with him, outweighed my reluctance. After much internal debate, I agreed, believing the sacrifice would pave the way for our happiness. How wrong I was. As soon as we exchanged vows, John's demeanor shifted dramatically. The warmth and attentiveness he'd shown during our courtship vanished, replaced by a cold indifference that left me reeling. One evening, as we sat in our new home, he dropped a bombshell. "To be honest, I didn't want to get married this early," he said, his voice devoid of emotion. I stared at him, stunned. "But you said you were considering marriage. That's why you agreed to meet me." He frowned, his words cutting like a knife. "I only agreed because your father asked me to. I can't refuse my boss, can I? With him so enthusiastic, how could I say no to marrying you? Besides, marrying you was a smart move for my career advancement." "So, you married me for a promotion?" I asked, my voice trembling with disbelief. "Of course," he scoffed. "Why else would I marry a boring woman like you?" His words struck me like a physical blow, leaving me speechless. I had given up my job, my financial independence, and my confidence, all for a man who saw me as a stepping stone. As the reality sank in, John's behavior grew worse. He stopped coming home regularly, instead spending nights out drinking, reeking of unfamiliar perfume when he did return. "It's none of your business," he'd snap when I asked where he'd been. I convinced myself his late nights were business-related, that as the wife of a capable man, I had to tolerate such behavior. But deep down, the truth gnawed at me. He was seeing other women, though it seemed casual, not a specific affair. Isolated and jobless, I had no one to confide in. My friends, distanced by my new role as a housewife, were no longer part of my life. I couldn't tell my father, fearing it would worry him and jeopardize John's position at his company. So, I suffered in silence, trapped in a marriage defined by forbearance and heartbreak. John's career, meanwhile, soared. He was promoted to division manager at an unusually rapid pace, a milestone that brought me a fleeting sense of relief. At least my silence hadn't been for nothing. His mood at home improved slightly. The sarcastic remarks and criticisms lessened, though he still rarely returned. But one evening, while he was in the bath, I glimpsed a notification on his unlocked phone. "I had so much fun today. I miss you already, even though we just parted. Looking forward to our sleepover this weekend." The message, adorned with heart emojis, was unmistakably from a lover. John had lied about a business trip that weekend. It was a cover for a romantic getaway. My heart raced as I checked the sender's name, Kathy Brown. The name was familiar, but where had I heard it? Then a photo arrived, a picture of John with a woman I recognized instantly. Kathy was the daughter of the president of one of our company's clients, someone I'd met at a company party, her flashy dress leaving a lasting impression. The realization hit me like a tidal wave. John was having an affair with Kathy Brown. I recalled the rumors about Kathy. She was engaged to a wealthy man from another company, a fact well known in our social circles. I resolved to confront John, asking him to come home early. Surprisingly, he agreed without protest, but before I could speak, he took the lead with a solemn expression. "I have something to tell you, Lily. My girlfriend is pregnant, so I've decided to leave you and be with her." The words felt like a punch to the gut. His girlfriend was undoubtedly Kathy, but pregnant? "It's already decided," he continued. "I've been appeasing your father all this time, but after meeting her, I realized how pointless our marriage was. She's the one for me, not a woman like you who has nothing to offer. She has everything." "So, you're divorcing me?" I asked, my voice hollow.
Yeah.
You need to leave this house, he replied coldly. Clinging to a final shred of hope, I asked, Are you sure about this? You won't regret it. He burst into laughter, his cruelty laid bare. Regret? No way. Let me tell you something. My girlfriend is the president's daughter, in a different league from your father, who's just an executive. I don't need to respect him anymore. Marrying her will make me the next president of her company. I can quit my job anytime. His words extinguished any lingering affection I had for him. He had used me, my father, and our marriage as a career ladder, discarding me the moment a better opportunity appeared. Do as you like, I said, my voice steady despite the pain. I won't say anything more. John, oblivious to my resolve, rambled on about Kathy's virtues, revealing she hadn't told him about the pregnancy. She'd planned to raise the child alone out of consideration for him. Smitten, he prepared divorce papers, eager to propose to her. I signed them without hesitation, tired of his betrayal. Packing my belongings, I moved to my parents' house, ending our marriage swiftly. The next night, John called, his voice frantic. Lily, where are you? Can you come to the nearby diner? I have something important to talk about. I'm at my parents' house. If it's important, come here, I replied. I can't. Please, it's a request for a lifetime, he pleaded. Reluctantly, I met him at the diner. He looked defeated, a shadow of the arrogant man who had discarded me. Lily, get back together with me, he begged, his voice breaking. What? I asked, stunned. She turned down my proposal, he admitted painfully. She has a fiancé her parents arranged. I was just a game to her. And the child isn't mine. I suppressed a smirk. I had known about Kathy's engagement, a well-known fact in our company. When I discovered their affair, I intended to warn John, but he'd preemptively divorced me. Knowing he'd face this outcome, I'd stayed silent. She chose me because I was married, thinking there'd be no strings attached, he continued. When I told her I divorced you, she brushed me off, saying I was an idiot. You brought this on yourself, I said coolly. You can't compare to her rich fiancé, can you? He looked shocked. How did you know her fiancé is a rich man? Everyone in the company knows Kathy's engaged to a wealthy man from another firm, I replied. I was going to tell you about her when I found out, but you told me to get out first. Remember when I asked if you'd regret it? You laughed it off. Did you tell your father? He asked, panic creeping into his voice. Of course, I said. I told him everything, including how you said you could quit your job anytime. What have you done? He gasped. Take it back. Tell him it was a mistake. It's too late, I said. Dad's furious. And by the way, you need to leave our house soon. It's in my name, bought by my father. What? He stammered. I'm in trouble if you kick me out. You're being removed from your post in New York, I added, delivering the final blow. Dad arranged for you to be transferred to a remote department, one known for layoff candidates. Be grateful you weren't fired. John's face crumbled. My father, enraged by John's betrayal, had acted swiftly, citing his lack of loyalty and integrity as reasons to remove him from the career track. You're my ex-husband now, I said coldly. We're strangers. Don't say I'm being cruel. I put up with your verbal abuse and affairs to spare my father's feelings. Now I'm free. Ignoring his pleas, I left the diner without looking back, wondering how I'd stayed with such a shallow man for so long. With my father's help, I secured a lawyer and obtained a substantial property division. John, desperate to cling to his job, drained his savings to pay the damages immediately. Now, he lives a modest life in a remote area, his once promising career a distant memory. My previous company, learning of my divorce, invited me back, valuing my skills independent of my father's influence. I returned, rekindling my love for work. My father, feeling guilty for introducing me to John, keeps suggesting new suitors, but I'm content with my single life for now. I have ample money, a fulfilling career, and the freedom to enjoy both work and leisure. This vibrant, independent life is mine to savor, and I intend to keep it that way for a while. My name is Jenna, and at 30 years old, I've been married to Seth, 32, for 3 years. He works as a director in his family's wholesale liquor company, where his father serves as president. I, too, work there as an office clerk, a role I took on after a marriage. My mother-in-law, a stay-at-home mom who once relied on a housekeeper, has never involved herself in the business. When I joined the family, they dismissed the housekeeper, declaring, "Why need one when we have a daughter-in-law?" My father-in-law and Seth nodded in agreement, setting the tone for my life in their household. My father-in-law, who married into the family, has always deferred to his wife, a dynamic Seth absorbed growing up. Even during our first visit before marriage, it was clear my mother-in-law ruled the house with an iron fist. Since joining the family, I've been burdened with both office work and household chores. The company, struggling financially, couldn't afford additional staff, so I stepped in to help. The housekeeper's dismissal was also a cost-cutting measure, leaving me to manage everything. The business, founded by Seth's grandfather, survives on long-standing relationships despite its outdated practices. With about 10 employees handling sales and deliveries, it clings to its legacy. My father-in-law, chosen to marry the founder's daughter, took over the company, a responsibility he carries with quiet diligence. "Dad's a patient man," Seth often says, praising his father's calm demeanor. "Grandpa was stern, but Mom's even more so." He speaks of his mother's dominance as if it's a fact of life, accepting her commands without question. Before marriage, Seth seemed lively, even a bit rebellious, but at home, he becomes subdued, almost invisible. The same is true for my father-in-law, who's bustling at work but silent at home. I was shocked by their transformation, but soon found myself falling into the same pattern. My mother-in-law's authority is absolute, and no one dares challenge her. Early in our marriage, she threw out a dinner I'd made, deeming it too spicy after one bite. "Are you trying to make me sick?" she bellowed, her face contorted with rage. I apologized profusely, panicked. "I'm sorry, was it too spicy?" She made me stand before her, launching into a tirade. "Do you want to ruin my health with this food?" Seth and my father-in-law froze, their eyes downcast, their faces pale. I glanced at them, hoping for support, but they were as petrified as I was. After a 30-minute lecture, I forgot why she was angry, but her hunger eventually won out, and she ate the meal. Seth and my father-in-law, conditioned by years under her rule, lived quietly to avoid her wrath. I began to regret marrying into such a formidable family. My mother-in-law grew up during the company's prosperous days, when it had twice as many employees and soaring sales. Accustomed to luxury, she hired housekeepers and shunned chores, a lifestyle she struggles to relinquish despite the company's decline. She loves shopping, returning with bags of expensive items, heedless of the financial strain. Neither Seth nor my father-in-law comment on her spending, so I stay silent, fearing a lecture longer than 30 minutes. For the first year, I was consumed with adapting to the family's dynamics and the company's demands. By our second year, a new issue emerged. We couldn't conceive a child. My mother-in-law, haunted by her father's lack of a son and the need to bring in a son-in-law, was obsessed with avoiding the same fate for Seth. As our third year approached, her sarcasm intensified. "When are you going to give us an heir? You didn't marry into this family to be an office clerk," she'd snap, even triggered by a baby on TV. "There are so many babies in the world. Why don't we have one here?" Her glares pierced me, while Seth and my father-in-law vanished whenever the topic arose. I confided in Seth, hoping for support, but he brushed me off. "Don't worry about it. Just let it go." His refusal to engage left me feeling isolated, as if I had no place in the family. The company's struggles worsened, unable to secure contracts with modern eateries, and my mother-in-law's shopping sprees continued unabated. She'd return in a foul mood, blaming me for her excesses. "It's Jenna's fault for not producing an heir. That's why I buy unnecessary things." Her irrational accusations wore me down, and my health began to falter. I visited a hospital, hoping I might be pregnant, but the diagnosis was stress-related illness. The doctor advised rest in a calming environment, an impossibility in my in-laws' home. I explained this to Seth and my in-laws. The doctor said I need rest, but I'm fine, I said, downplaying my condition. To my shock, my mother-in-law responded, "You should go back to your parents' house and rest for a while." She turned to my father-in-law. "We can manage, right? It's not so busy now." He nodded, relieved. "We can cover for you. It's okay." I was stunned by her unexpected kindness, wondering if I'd misjudged her. But my hopes were misplaced. She was merely seizing an opportunity to push me out. The next day, I returned to my parents' house, where my mother, seeing my pale, thin frame, nearly wept. "You've lost weight. Rest and recover," she urged. My father, reading my expression, understood the toll my in-laws had taken. My health improved rapidly away from their oppressive environment, confirming it as the source of my stress. A week later, my in-laws appeared at my parents' house unannounced. My mother-in-law burst in, yelling, "We're returning this good-for-nothing daughter-in-law who can't even bear an heir. It's up to her parents to take responsibility." My mother was too shocked to respond, but my father rushed to the door, indignant. "I can't let you call my daughter a failure. What do you mean?" My mother-in-law doubled down. 3 years into marriage and no baby. She's weak and can't work. My mother, regaining her composure, countered, "Isn't Seth also responsible for not having a child?" My mother-in-law snorted. "There's nothing wrong with Seth. The problem is your daughter." My father, maintaining his calm, said, "If you insist, we'll take Jenna back. Are you fine with her leaving?" From my hiding spot, I nodded, my heart heavy but resolute. Seth hadn't visited me once, nor had he stood up to his mother's cruel remarks. Being called a failure and treated like a defective product was my breaking point. My father responded with remarkable composure, his voice steady despite my mother-in-law's venomous outburst. "If you insist, we'll take Jenna back. Are you fine with her leaving?" My father-in-law, hovering behind his wife, seemed poised to speak, his expression fraught with hesitation. But before he could utter a word, my mother-in-law cut him off sharply. "We'll send this failure of a daughter-in-law's luggage later. We'll hire a divorce lawyer too." With a final glare at my parents, she stormed out, my father-in-law trailing behind her, his shoulders slumped. My mother, still reeling from the confrontation, turned on my father. "Why didn't you say more to such rude remarks?" she demanded, her voice trembling with indignation. Calming her, he replied, "There's no use talking to that woman. Don't worry, we'll make her realize her mistake through actions, not words." My mother, puzzled by his cryptic response, remained furious, but I understood immediately. My father-in-law's fleeting attempt to intervene hinted that he, too, knew the stakes. My father owns a restaurant chain with a long-standing business relationship with my father-in-law's liquor wholesale company. As someone who worked in administration at Seth's company, I was privy to this connection. It was my father who introduced me to Seth, a match rooted in the trust built between our families since my grandfather-in-law's time as president. My father's company, which began as a single struggling store, owed much to my grandfather-in-law's support. Now, with numerous locations and an affiliated pub, it's a major client for Seth's family business, procuring all its alcohol and beverages exclusively from them. Though cheaper suppliers exist, my father continued the partnership out of gratitude. My mother-in-law, oblivious to this dynamic, had the audacity to insult my father, unaware of the leverage he held. The next day, my father called Seth's company and informed the person in charge, "We're ending all transactions with you." The news sent shockwaves through the office. The flustered employee reported to my father-in-law and Seth, who were blindsided by the decision. For the first time, my father-in-law's patience snapped. "Because of you, we've lost a major business deal," he roared at my mother-in-law, his voice echoing with uncharacteristic fury. She blinked, stunned. "What?" "It's because of me." He explained that I was the daughter of a key client, a fact discussed when Seth and I married. My mother-in-law, who never concerned herself with business, had forgotten entirely. "Now that you mention it, I vaguely recall something about it," she admitted, her bravado crumbling as the gravity of her actions dawned on her. Seth, equally shaken, lashed out. What were you thinking, deciding on Jenna's and my divorce on your own? I don't want a divorce. If this continues, our company will collapse. I had informed Seth of his mother's demand for a divorce, but he'd remained silent until now, spurred by the threat to their livelihood. My father's company was a profitable client, one of the few not demanding price reductions in a market squeezing their margins. The trust between my father and my grandfather-in-law had been the foundation of my introduction to Seth, a trust now shattered by my mother-in-law's recklessness. That evening, my in-laws and Seth arrived at my parents' house, but my father barred them from entering. After all the disrespect, "What brings you here today?" he asked, his anger palpable. My father-in-law, bowing his head, pleaded, "We're sorry for our behavior yesterday. Could you reconsider our trade relationship?" My father was unmoved. "We traded out of respect for the former president, but let's end it now." Despite my father-in-law's repeated apologies, my father remained firm. Turning to Seth and my mother-in-law, he said, "You two should apologize as well." Reluctantly prompted, they resisted. My mother-in-law scoffed, "Why do we have to go this far? Let's give up and find another trading partner." Seth echoed her defiance. "There's no need for us to apologize." My father's anger flared. "Seth, I'm disappointed in you. Why didn't you defend my daughter?" Seth, unable to meet his gaze, stayed silent. Overwhelmed, I stepped forward, my voice breaking. "Because you always do whatever my mother-in-law says, I've been suffering." Seth tried to respond, but a glance at his mother's stern face silenced him. In that moment, my last flicker of hope for our marriage extinguished. "I'll pick up my belongings later," I told him, resolute in my decision to divorce. My mother-in-law, undeterred, erupted. "Yes, Seth needs a divorce from you. We'll find a bride who isn't a failure and can give us a successor." She stormed out, Seth trailing behind her, leaving my father-in-law alone. My father urged him to stop apologizing, but he revealed a shocking decision. "I'm closing the company and leaving the house," he said, his voice heavy with resignation. "The business has been losing money for years." I worked hard to pass it to Seth, but it was all in vain. The revelation stunned us. I knew the company struggled, but not to this extent. Days later, when I went to retrieve my belongings, the house was empty. At the company, creditors swarmed, having heard rumors of bankruptcy. My father-in-law and Seth were overwhelmed, and I left without a word. Soon after, the company declared bankruptcy. My mother-in-law, burdened with debt, filed for personal bankruptcy and fled with Seth, who seemed intent on following her. My father-in-law stayed behind, seeking re-employment for the remaining staff. I wished Seth had shown his father's sense of duty, but he was too entwined with his mother's influence. Back at my parents' home, my health recovered swiftly. Though the divorce left me disheartened, a friend, concerned for my well-being, introduced me to a man with strong principles. After a year of dating, we married, and soon after, I became pregnant, a dream I'd thought unattainable with Seth. The ease of my pregnancy confirmed that the stress of my in-laws' home had been the barrier. Now, in a peaceful environment, I eagerly await our baby, my heart full of gratitude for the life I've reclaimed. "Look, I don't want to see my sister like this either, but you're her sister-in-law. It's okay for you, right?" My husband, Tom, said, his tone dismissive. Those words marked the beginning of a deception that would unravel our marriage and expose his family's true colors. My name is Susan, and Tom and I, both in our late 20s, have been together since high school, marrying recently after years of dating. People often assume we were classmates, but we attended different schools. I met Tom at the home of my close friend Mila, his sister, during a club meeting visit. I've known Tom's family for years, fostering a close bond, especially with Mila, whom I still call by name, not sis. Our relationship remained warm even after I moved in with Tom's family post-marriage. Before our wedding, Tom and I worked far apart, so I planned to quit my job. We intended to rent an apartment near his parents' home, but Tom, citing work pressures, suggested we live with them temporarily. "Susan, I'm sorry I've been too busy to look for a place. Can we stay with my parents until things settle?" he asked. Trusting our strong ties and knowing Tom worked in the family's self-employed business, I agreed, confident I could adapt to life in their countryside home. I haven't found a job locally, so I support Tom and his parents by handling housework and occasionally assisting with their business. Mila, living nearby, visits on her weekday days off, providing companionship that makes my days feel fulfilling. But a sudden change in Mila's behavior disrupted this harmony. She began forgetting things, her face visibly altered, alarming even me, who saw her less frequently. One day, she confided in me, her voice trembling. I went to the hospital. They said I have early-onset Alzheimer's. I'm scared. Stunned, I realized neither Tom nor his parents knew. Alzheimer's would make living alone impossible, so Tom's parents swiftly took over Mila's house, insisting she move in with us. Thus began my ordeal. Tom and his parents showed little interest in caring for Mila, leaving the responsibility to me. We have work to do. We'll make money, so we'll leave Mila to you, they said, heading to their store. At first, I attributed their absence to business demands, but it became clear they were shirking their duty. I'm old, and work is tough. I can't care for Mila too, Tom's father said apologetically. I don't want to see my daughter change. Sorry, Susan. Tom added, after marriage, I'm the breadwinner. Leave money-making to me. In return, take care of the house. It's about sharing roles, right? Their excuses piled up, and they'd watch TV while I tended to Mila, who, seeing their indifference, looked heartbroken. I'm sorry, Susan, she'd cry, her sadness piercing me. The situation worsened when I learned Tom and his parents had secretly signed a contract for a new home, planning to move out. We're tired from work. With an Alzheimer's daughter, we'd have no rest, they said. Stay here and look after Mila. It's fine since you're only doing housework. We'll spare you chores at our new house. You're close to my sister, so it's no problem, right? We'll send living expenses. They moved out, leaving Mila and me behind. They visited their store daily, but never checked on us, ignoring Mila's condition. I realized they had abandoned her care entirely, trapping me in an untenable situation. Early-onset Alzheimer's is incurable, though symptoms can be managed. Would I care for Mila indefinitely, unable to work? Tom had left a lump sum, promising more, but could I trust them? The money wasn't enough for a lifetime, and I couldn't leave Mila alone to job hunt. Public welfare seemed daunting, its complexities overwhelming my sleep-deprived mind. In my despair, Mila's voice rang out, vibrant and clear. Finally, it worked. I turned to find her expression strong, devoid of illness. Susan, I'm sorry to surprise you, she said. I don't have Alzheimer's. I haven't been to a hospital. I was wondering what I'd do if they asked for a diagnosis, but they believed me without question. Why would you lie? I asked, bewildered. Mila revealed Tom's shocking plan before our marriage. He said he'd force his wife to live with us, so we could use her however we wanted. My parents agreed. I knew then something was wrong. Tom hadn't been too busy to find an apartment. He deliberately moved me into his parents' home to exploit me as a maid. Behind my back, he and his parents plotted to burden me with chores, his misogynistic remarks escalating after marriage. I thought he was just boasting before the wedding, Mila continued, but he never looked for a place. I couldn't stand seeing you treated this way, so I decided to expose their true colors. Consulting friends, Mila faked Alzheimer's, predicting her family would shirk care duties. As expected, they dumped the responsibility on me and fled, leaving money to ease their guilt. Her revelation shattered my illusions. I'd convinced myself I was happy, free of mother-in-law conflicts, but I'd been miserable, overwhelmed by housework, ignored by Tom, and criticized for inefficiency. Mila's ruse was considerate. She feigned minor forgetfulness, avoiding burdensome care tasks. Her actions gave me courage. You always put yourself last, she said. I knew they'd run away and leave money, giving you freedom. Inspired, I secretly prepared to move and job hunt, with Mila's help. She maintained her act when Tom's family visited, but assisted me wholeheartedly otherwise. Their rare visits made planning smooth. A month later, I secured a job and a new place. Mila urged me to confront them. We can't leave quietly, Susan. They need to regret what they did. At their store, we revealed the truth. Tom was furious. What are you thinking, sis? How I treat my wife is none of your business. His mother chimed in. A wife serves her husband's family. I did the same. You're a terrible daughter. I don't recognize you as my daughter or Susan as my daughter-in-law, his father added. Return the living expenses and leave. Tom demanded a divorce, insisting I repay the money. Mila produced a note they'd left, signed with their seals. We're giving you this money as living expenses to care for our daughter. She warned, if I show this around, what will people say about entrepreneurs who abandon their sick daughter and daughter-in-law? Silenced, they couldn't refute her. I submitted divorce papers Mila had prepared, and we filed them at City Hall, leaving Tom and his parents crestfallen. Tom pleaded, Susan, can't we start over? I'll find an apartment, change jobs, don't abandon me. You don't get it, I said. You were ready to abandon Mila, and laughed while I suffered. I'm sick of your cowardice. His failure to understand my anger appalled me, erasing any regret. Unbeknownst to me, Mila had spread rumors in the neighborhood, claiming illness and abandonment by her family, bolstered by being seen in a wheelchair I pushed. The community, noticing the family's absence, believed her, ostracizing them. Their business suffered as customers dwindled, but I felt no sympathy. They reaped what they sowed. I thrive at my new job, despite its challenges, and sharing a home with Mila is unexpectedly joyful. We balance housework and independence, creating a fulfilling life. I have no desire to remarry, content with Mila's companionship and my newfound freedom. I got rid of all your stuff because you went home without telling me, my husband, Joshua, declared coldly when I returned from caring for my mother. A quick glance around confirmed his words. My belongings were gone. Why would you do such a thing? I demanded, my voice shaking. You left me alone to go back home. It's your fault for not listening, he retorted, flinging the newspaper at me with a sneer. My name is Lucy, and at 65, I'm set to retire this year but accepted an offer to work until 70. Joshua and I, both previously divorced, married 2 years ago after being introduced by friends. Childless, we found excitement in our late 50s partnership, despite busy careers. But since Joshua's retirement a year ago, his attitude shifted. His dominance grew, his constant complaints about my housekeeping wearing me down emotionally. As newlyweds, I dismissed divorce, concerned about our future, but his behavior escalated. One day, a college friend invited me to lunch, a rare chance to reconnect. I accepted eagerly, planning to meet 2 high school friends who also attended our college. Leaving early Sunday while Joshua slept, I left a note. Out for lunch with friends, back later. Arriving early, I found my friends already there, their excitement mirroring mine. At a cozy restaurant, we savored dishes, reminisced, and laughed, a respite from my stressful home and work life. Let's come here often after you retire, they teased, noting my 5-year extension. We'll have fun now, not just later. A commotion interrupted our joy. Joshua stormed in, his face twisted with rage. He knocked our dishes to the floor, shattering plates. Why did you go out without preparing my meal? He bellowed. You're wasting money here. Stunned, I protested. You always manage without me cooking. It's my money. I can spend it how I want. Shut up. You'll lose your income at 70, save it, he snapped, ignoring the public setting. Customers and staff stared, my face burning with shame. My friends intervened. We're just friends having a meal. You should understand that, one said, glaring at him. Joshua, trembling with fury, splashed water from a nearby table onto them. It's because of people like you that her housework suffers, he shouted, dragging me out amid the chaos. Days later, I apologized to my friends. It's not your fault, they said. You should leave him. He'll control everything you do. Their words echoed my thoughts, but emotional attachment kept me tethered. Fearing further outbursts, I invited Joshua shopping for my mother's pajamas. He grudgingly joined but stayed in the car, sighing, Why shop for your mother? When I returned, he and the car were gone. He ignored my calls, forcing me to walk home, an exhausting 2-hour trek at nearly 60, carrying bags. At home, he laughed mockingly. How long did it take you? Your shopping isn't my concern. Make dinner. Ignoring my protests, he resumed watching TV, his cruelty pushing me to the brink. A call from my mother's home care nurse intensified my distress. My 87-year-old mother had fractured a bone, requiring constant care. My mom needs me. I'm going, I told Joshua. What about my dinner? She'll be fine with a fracture, he scoffed. She's elderly. She can't walk or eat alone. I argued. Smirking, he said, if we leave her, someone from the other side will pick her up, right? His callous remark about my mother's death broke something in me. Ignoring his insults, I left for her home, vowing revenge. For a week, I cared for my mother, ignoring Joshua's incessant calls. Knowing I might quit work to support her, I returned home to discuss our future. Finding the door unlocked, I called out, only to hear Joshua's bombshell. He discarded my belongings, including my clothes, cosmetics, and a precious memory album, for visiting my mother without permission. Get out if you can't listen, he barked, hitting the table. Exhausted, I sighed, delivering a calculated strike. Our marriage certificate, where is it? Joshua's eyes widened. We hadn't submitted it, living in a common-law marriage. My mother, who opposed our union, had sensed his flaws, and work convenience kept my maiden name. You forgot about it and threw it away, didn't you? I said coldly. We're not legally married, and I built this house before you. You need to leave, Joshua. I can't live with someone who insults my friends and mother. He pleaded, revealing his jealousy. You can work while I can't. I was offered a lesser role after retirement, but my pride wouldn't let me take it. They cut me off at 65. His excuses meant nothing. I packed his belongings into garbage bags, mirroring his cruelty. You relied on my income, but we're strangers now. Get by on your own. Joshua's savings are nearly depleted, his pride and relatives' disdain leaving him jobless, scraping by on a meager pension and part-time work. I invited my mother to live with me, balancing work and caregiving with workplace support and services. My days are busy but joyful, a stark contrast to the misery Joshua inflicted. Please feel free to comment below if you liked this. Remember to like and subscribe for more.